4 productivity habits dominate 2026, and only 2 trace to income. The 4 a.m. wake-up, the cold plunge, the second brain, the deep work block, each one sold as a wealth protocol. Most people running them get mood, discipline, and a sense of progress, but no economic output. The mechanism underneath each habit is knowable, and the difference between the 2 that pay and the 2 that don't comes down to one setup most people never build. Once you see which is which, you can't run the other 2 the same way again. The performance theater audit, the productivity industry sold you a stack of rituals and called each one a wealth protocol. That framing is the problem. A ritual isn't a unit of value. The shippable output is the unit of value, and a ritual with no output is motion dressed up as progress that looks like effort, but produces nothing the market will pay for. Set the bar before testing the habits. A protocol pays only when you can trace a mechanism from the ritual to dollars, and that mechanism has to produce something the market will pay for. Correlation isn't a mechanism, because 2 things rising together doesn't mean one caused the other. Mood isn't a mechanism, because feeling alert doesn't produce a deliverable. Feeling productive isn't a mechanism either, because the feeling is internal and the income is external. The question is whether the habit generates a specific output the market will pay for, raises your rate, or compounds into an asset you own. Apply that bar to the 4 habits the industry pushed in 2026, and the field splits cleanly. 2 of them carry a traceable path to income. 2 of them don't. The part that stings is that the 2 that pay only work in a configuration almost no one builds, which is why people can run all 4 for years and watch their income stay flat. The income layer isn't theoretical. Side hustlers in the United States average roughly $1,200 a month, according to a Lending Tree survey of about 2,000 consumers. That number represents real money captured by people who converted protected time into a shippable output. People spending that same time on rituals without outputs aren't in that number, and the difference isn't work ethic. What separates them is what the work produced. This isn't a debate about discipline. The disciplined person running the wrong protocol is still broke. Discipline is real, the output is 0, and the gap between effort and income is the entire story. The next 4 sections test each habit against the bar, dismiss the 2 that fail, and reconfigure the 2 that survive so they actually pay. 4 a.m. wake-ups, the correlation that isn't causation. The first habit on the audit is the 4 a.m. wake-up, and it's the most defended ritual in the productivity space. There's data behind the claim. An amorous sleep survey of U.S. adults found that people waking at 4 a.m. reported the highest average income of any wake time, nearly $49,000 a year, while people waking at noon reported the lowest, about $23,000. The gap is real, and people quote it constantly. The gap isn't caused by the alarm. The same survey data shows early risers spend 58% more time on strategic planning and skill development than late risers, and income tracks the activity, not the clock. Strip the planning and the skill work out of the morning, and the income advantage disappears with it. Keep the 4 a.m. wake-up and fill the hour with email and a cold shower, and you have replicated the schedule without the mechanism. This is the container and contents error. The 4 a.m. hour is a container, and the deep work or skill building you put inside it is the contents. The market pays for the contents, not the container, which is why a 10 a.m. block of focused skill work beats a 4 a.m. block of inbox triage every time. Getting this wrong carries a cost that the productivity influencers don't mention. Forcing yourself into a 4 a.m. schedule against your chronotype produces sleep debt, and sleep debt degrades the exact cognitive performance that drives earnings. Academic chronotype research from the University of Oulu and Aalto University finds that evening types forced into early schedules earn less, not more, because the misalignment impairs the work that actually pays. Forbes reports the same pattern from the opposite direction, noting that choosing sleep over an arbitrary early wake time often produces better career outcomes than the wake-up itself. The verdict on the first habit is straightforward. The 4 a.m. wake-up doesn't pay. Protected cognitive time pays, and it pays regardless of where it sits on the clock. It's the container, not the contents, and almost everyone running the ritual has filled it with the wrong material. 2 habits remain on the audit: and the open question is whether either one carries a mechanism that survives the test. Cold plunges, the mood hack. With no money link, the cold plunge is the second habit on the audit, and it carries the strongest cultural signal. Hustle culture frames it as a CEO protocol, a daily ritual that builds resilience, focus, and the kind of edge that supposedly compounds into wealth over time. The claim is everywhere, and the evidence is narrow. The documented effects of cold water immersion are real, and they stop at the body. Controlled studies show short-term improvements in mood and alertness, along with a reduction in self-reported sick leave of about 29% over 90 days. There are muscle recovery benefits for people training hard. That's the entire documented effect. No study in the compensation or performance literature connects cold exposure to pay, promotion rates, or revenue. The gap isn't an oversight. Executive compensation research tracks firm size, performance, industry, and governance, and wellness rituals don't appear as a variable because they don't move the number. A CEO's pay package responds to revenue growth, margins, and shareholder return, not to whether they sat in 50-degree water that morning. The danger here is the story the brain builds around a trend. One satirical paper found a correlation of 0.97 between Google searches for ice bath and the U.S. Consumer Price Index over nearly 2 decades. Two unrelated curves rose together, and the correlation looked airtight. That's the exact mechanism behind the cold plunge and wealth story. Cold plunges got popular during a period of economic expansion. High-profile founders endorsed them, and the brain connected the two trends into a causal narrative that the data never supported. The cold plunge fails the audit. It's a health practice, not an income protocol. It's useful for mood and recovery, and it builds a kind of discipline. Discipline without a revenue-linked output is just expensive discomfort, and the market doesn't pay you for being uncomfortable at 6 a.m. 2 habits tested, 2 dismissed, and the pattern is already clear. The first protocol that actually survives the audit is next, and the reason it survives is the reason the other 2 couldn't. Deep work blocks, the value premium. The third habit is the first survivor. Deep work blocks carry a direct, traceable mechanism to income, and the mechanism has a name. Cal Newport called it the deep work value premium, and the thesis is built on 2 forces moving in the same direction. Deep work is becoming rare because attention has fragmented across tools, notifications, and meetings. Deep work commands a higher price because the highest paid work in the knowledge economy is cognitively demanding. Rarity plus value equals a premium, and that premium is exactly what the 4 a.m. hour and the cold plunge can't produce no matter how consistently you run them. The mechanism runs in steps. High-value knowledge work, strategy, writing, code, design, negotiation, complex decisions requires sustained single-task concentration. The average knowledge worker has been engineered out of that state, with focus blocks shrinking to roughly 11 to 15 minutes between interruptions. The people who can re-enter deep focus deliberately produce output the market can't easily replace, and they price it accordingly. That's the income link, and it's structural rather than motivational. This is where the 4 a.m. audit folds back into the answer. The reason early risers in the survey earned more wasn't the alarm. It was the protected cognitive block the early hour created, and the skill work or strategic work they put inside it. Deep work is the contents that made the container seem to matter. Separate the two, and the container is just a clock time that anyone can replicate, while the contents are the protocol that actually pays and that almost no one builds. Name it first, the revenue-linked deep work block. A revenue-linked deep work block is a protected 90 to 120-minute window spent on a single cognitively demanding task that directly feeds a paid deliverable, a rate-raising skill, or a strategic decision. It isn't a focus session on email, and it isn't a quiet hour on whatever feels urgent. The block pays only when its output is wired to revenue. Build it before the demand layer of the day opens, and treat it as non-negotiable, not as a reward for finishing your inbox. No notifications, no switching, no half-presence. End every block with one shippable artifact, whether that's a written section, a shipped feature, a sent proposal, or a made decision that moves the work forward. The artifact is the unit of value, and the block is the machine that produces it. The failure mode is quiet and widespread. What usually happens is people running something they call deep work on whatever task feels urgent, and they end up with a quiet hour of shallow work in return. A focus session spent on inbox triage or status updates isn't deep work, regardless of how silent the room is. The block only pays when the task inside it is the cognitively demanding work that compounds into income. The verdict on the third habit flips the audit. Deep work blocks pay, and they pay only in the revenue-linked configuration. It's the block. Income is the artifact it ships, and that artifact is what separates this protocol from the two that failed the audit. One habit remains, and it passes the same test, but only if you reconfigure it into a shipping pipeline, and most people never build that version. Second brains, the shipping pipeline. The fourth habit is the second survivor, and it carries a condition that disqualifies almost every version you have seen practiced online. A second brain pays, but only when it's wired as a pipeline that ships output rather than a museum that stores it, and the difference between the two is the entire income story. Most people own the museum. Tiago Forte built the framework that most second brains run on, and he called it code. Capture, organize, distill, express. The stated end goal of the system is the fourth step, express. Capture and organize exist to feed expression, not to replace it. No one designed the system to be a library. They designed it as a factory that turns raw material into shipped output, and the factory only earns when the shipping step actually runs. The trap is the one most practitioners live in. Endless capture, tagging, reorganizing, and refining with no shippable output at the end. The vault becomes procrastination with extra steps, a system that feels productive and produces nothing. Community discussion and 2026 critique pieces document this pattern widely, and people spend 2 years building a Notion workspace only to ship 0 paid deliverables from it. The 2026 inflection sharpens the point. AI assistants now automate the capture and organize steps that used to justify the system. The only remaining place where a human outperforms the machine in the pipeline is express, the exact step most second brain owners skip. The part people spend the most time on is now the cheapest part, and the part they avoid is now the only part worth doing. The mechanism that pays is specific. A note becomes income only when it becomes a deliverable. A published article, a course module, a client report, a strategic decision, a product spec, a sent proposal. The second brain correlates with income at the exact point where captured knowledge converts to shipped output, and it produces nothing at any earlier step in the pipeline. Here is the counterintuitive part. The capture step feels like work because it produces a visible artifact, a new note, a tagged link, a sorted folder. The express step feels like risk because it produces a verdict, a published piece that could fail, a proposal that could get rejected, a decision that could be wrong. The brain prefers the visible artifact over the risky verdict, which is why almost every second brain owner optimizes the wrong end of the pipeline and wonders why their income doesn't move. The income lives on the risky end, and the busy end is where the time goes. Name the implementation, the capture to ship pipeline. The rule is simple. No note enters the system without a scheduled express date. Every project node maps to a deliverable with a deadline, and any note with no path to a shipped artifact gets archived rather than organized. The system pays when it forces output, and it costs you when it enables hoarding. The second brain passes the audit, but only in one configuration. As a library, it's a tax on your time. As a pipeline, it's a compounding income asset, and the gap between the two is one step that almost no one runs. The two protocol stack. The two survivors and the system reveals itself. A protected deep work block produces the artifact. A second brain, wired to ship, captures the inputs that feed the block and routes the artifact to its deliverable. These aren't two separate habits running in parallel. They're the two ends of a single income-generating pipeline, and that pipeline only runs when both ends are configured to ship rather than to store. The immediate step is an audit you can run before tomorrow. Look at your last week and identify the single deep work block that produced a shippable, revenue-linked artifact, the kind of output the market would actually pay for. If you can't find one, you have your answer, and it isn't a discipline problem. The protocol isn't missing. The configuration is, and that's the only thing that ever paid. If this changed how you think, subscribe. I break down these frameworks every week, the psychology, habits, and mental models of the world's highest performers, distilled into tools you can actually use. The audit starts tomorrow morning, and the first artifact you ship will tell you everything.